today is about creating that best onboarding experience, because we know, the level of interest that there's been in this session, that we all recognise how significant it is. And motivation engagement is never going to be higher than at that point of offer and at the starting point. So we want to make sure that we capture that, we maintain that. But also from an organisational perspective, we want to be able to, get them on board. We want them productive, part of the organisation as soon as possible. And alongside the motivation and the engagement, we also recognise that there will be a level of anxiety, which is perfectly natural. There can be a feeling of a need to be able to be producing and be productive, and evidencing that you've made the right appointments puts pressure on people. So, we want to make sure that we are creating an environment that people feel able to relax, settle in, and be part of the organisation as soon as they can. And just looking at a few of the stats that are around when I started looking into this. So Glassdoor identified that onboarding increased retention by 82% and productivity by 17%. I don't know the actual measures they were using of that. But then when Gallup did a poll, they found that 88% of organisations thought that 88% of employees thought their organisations didn't offer a good onboarding experience. So we seem to have a bit of a disparity there in terms of a recognition that is important and actually what's happening in reality. And some of the frustrations that people were talking about as their experience was having trouble accessing IT systems, feeling frustrated, ignored on their first day, which isn't a great start. And then some of the more fundamental parts of the training that, 45% didn't receive any data protection training, which you would think as a business risk perspective would be something that most organisations would recognise the significance of. And part of thinking about is, when does the actual onboarding start? When does that process actually start? And, the concept of pre-boarding, if you like, that actually onboarding starts with every touch point somebody has with the organisation, from the speed of getting the offer to the speed of follow-up of a written offer, for the follow-up of practical things, because somebody will be excited but anxious. They'll want to get things sorted out, and actually it all adds to a positive impression they will gain of your organisation. One of the key things is, the practicalities. When I was talking to Joe and Amy, the feedback they'd had from people, the difference it makes when people have got all their IT equipment ready and waiting and, all set up to start, making sure that the right people are there on their first day so they feel properly welcomed, and, being clear on what they're going to be doing in the first week. And although, we've got the hybrid working, the working from home, and different models of working adds another dimension. But personally, I think the basics still stay the same. We actually just have to think a bit more creatively about how we deliver that. So if we just briefly look at some of the things on these different areas that I was thinking of, sort of the bits that we would need to cover for onboarding, and then as usual there'll be an opportunity for you to have discussions in groups to share experience, ideas, ask questions. So yeah, before they start, and as far as possible, put yourself into that new employee situation. We've all been there. We all know what are our concerns, what would allay those concerns, what we want to know, what would be helpful for us before we start. And actually make sure we're ticking those boxes for that person. Make sure we're always making the employee, the new employee, central to this, because there's a business benefit to do so. And that can be part of the process, where if we're dealing with large scale onboarding programs, or if it's one-to-one, the principle is still the same. Think about how we're making it the best experience for the employee. I mean, if when it goes well, if you think what all the benefits we're getting, it's, they'll settle in quickly, they'll become productive, they'll be working to the highest potential. When we're not doing all these things, we can lose the employee, and then we've wasted all that time on recruitment. We wasted the time planning the induction. We've got morale impact for the team because of wasted resources, impact on employer brand, and the impact on the employee themselves, because nobody wants to start a job for it not to work out. We will start a job hoping it's going to be the best experience ever. So when I'm talking about the logistics, or when I put that up as a header, I was thinking about, and actually that was a key theme from feedback for people of different things I was reading up. Is the manager there or in contact on the first day? Do they know where to go and who to ask for on the first day if they're actually going somewhere? Do they know where to park? Have they got all the login information for when they have the opportunity to set up on the system, assuming it's a role that involves IT? So, the basic logistics in place, so people are not frustrated by things that could easily be thought about and planned in advance. Thinking about health, safety and well-being, this is from both sides. This is about what as an organisation do you need to do to manage any risk? What things should you be doing? This is something, particularly if you've got home workers, are you doing risk assessments for their workstation at home? What are you doing to make sure that they've got a good environment to be working? What messages do you need to give around health and safety procedures? What about your approach to well-being of employees? What do you need to share with them? What resources have you got? And what messages do you want to give out about the importance to their well-being to you? Equipment and systems. I don't think many of us will ever have started a new job when everything technology-wise works smoothly. But I think having systems and making sure that people have got the equipment that they need on day one, that they are set up properly on the system, that they have got access to all the elements of your system, parts of the shared drives and different databases or software or whatever you're using, that it's actually all set up and there's clear ways that they can learn to find their way. And how are you going to check their level of knowledge and understanding and make sure that they feel confident and equipped to be dealing with all of that? And then the bit about who are you? What do you want them to feel part of? What do you want them to know about your culture, your values, your wider purpose? Who are all the stakeholders? What is it you really want them to take on board, to become part of? What's important to you in terms of vision, mission and values, and what you're expecting from them in terms of behaviours as part of that, and what can they expect from you as part of that? The benefits and policies. So some of it is about the individual benefits, some of it is about wider policies, what might they need to know, but not getting too bogged down with, getting people, in some sectors, people have to do a lot more, health and social care, that key part of induction is people have to be very familiar with a lot of policies related to the work. But others, what do they need to know, and what's an easy way of people understanding and knowing the key elements of it? So lots of bits before we even get to the learning their role, but they're all, if you like, sort of bits of the jigsaw to help them get into the best place to be learning what they actually want to do. We talk quite a bit, there's quite a lot of the first 90 days of what people want to achieve and can deliver, or expectations in the first 90 days, and how can we support people to do that? How can we be clear what the expectations are? And what are the key elements in an induction plan? Who do they need to actually see? Who do they need to meet? How do you get the right balance between helping them feel informed and equipped and information overload? And I think that's a very difficult one to achieve, because I think we probably all remember those first couple of weeks of any job tend to be exhausting, because we're just trying to absorb so much information from, the days when how the printer works, where you got coffee, or, who to ask if something didn't work. You know, lots of different things we have to retain. But being clear on expectations, thinking about, you know, is who would be the best people to align them with. You know, look at having a buddy and a mentor, because they actually have different functions. You know, a mentor that they can go to help them develop in their role, a buddy that can be somebody that they can talk to about things that they might not be so comfortable talking to a mentor about, but somebody they can ask the little day-to-day things that you feel silly that you don't know, but then there's no reason that you would know because you've only just started. So thinking about that. How will you introduce them to the team? How will you rebuild that team, though, if it's part of a team, which most roles are at some level, you know, by bringing they're not a new member of a team. By them joining the company, it becomes a new team. So how are you going to be working with that group of people to help them become that new team that draws in that the different mix of people? So what I'd like you to think about is, in your world, in your organisation, what would make a great onboarding experience? What are you currently doing that's working well? What, if you step back and perhaps put yourself in that new employee's position, are you not doing as well as you might? What might make it a better experience? And if you are trying to mix people that are, you know, home-based, field-based, office-based, you know, factory-based, or whatever, you know, how can you tailor the process so that they still feel that they're getting the support they need to become fully competent? Obviously, different roles have got different levels of complexity. And I think one challenge often with induction programs is people start off very keen with a clear plan on day one, and then by day 6, somebody's sort of knowing their way around a bit, so that you can't just let the program go a bit and they're just sort of allowed to find their own way. But how do you keep for that whole period, you know, the whole probation period effectively, make sure that you are still carrying on that support, you're still thinking about it as being part of the whole onboarding process? And I think that's where the concept of onboarding is different from induction. I used to think induction is actually, what do I need to know to start my job? Whereas I think onboarding takes you that whole process until you are fully part of it. That's just my interpretation of the difference in the terminology. I don't know whether anybody's thought about it or got a different view, but I think that's kind of where it changes for me. We had a good discussion. The group I joined, there were some good ideas and things coming up. So let's see. So group 1 was Nina, Maggie, Jackie. Would one of your group like to sort of share some of the insights and ideas you were having?
Yeah, I think there's some, can you hear me all right?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, there's lots of interesting ideas, and I think everybody's tackling it in some unique ways, and some things that perhaps I hadn't thought of. I like the idea of a roadmap, so that what the expectation was, and we highlighted things like, you know, what all the things that they needed to do, and all the roles and responsibilities of who was doing what. So who manages that induction to make sure it happens? I think with best will in the world, as HR specialists, we can try and get people to follow what we want them to do, but perhaps they don't always do them. So it's some sort of way of measuring how we can ensure that we've got consistency. So there's some really good ideas about, you know, training, socializing, telling people how they communicate and when they communicate, and whether we do welcome packs. So there's lots of different ideas, you know, visual ideas as well. You know, it's just making sure that you make them feel special and wanted. And one of the comments I liked and I've learned from is that it starts from the advert, from the job role. And that's something I hadn't really thought about.
I think it is every touch point with the organisation at any point is actually part of it, because it will be above, beyond, or even before that, won't it? You know, you get a perception of a company by their general brand. So, you know, whether you attract people, it's almost, you know, right back before that, isn't it? Yeah, thank you. Anything else?
No, I think that's it. I mean, there's so much, but that's a quick version, unless any of the team like to add.
No, thanks, Nina. By the time I'd realised what group I was in, you'd started talking, so I'm quite happy with that. Thank you.
Okay, the second group was the group that Amy was in. So would one of the group like to chat? Don't leave Amy to do it. That was Liz, Michelle. Anybody comfortable to share?
Okay, I'll go for it. No one's going to talk. So one of the things that came up in our group was a buddy system. Just having that one person to be able to ask those daunting questions to. And we talked a lot as well about the size of the company. It all depends as to how personal that onboarding process can be. With some of the larger companies, they have implemented video introductions from the CEO if he's in a different country. Some of the smaller organisations, you know, arranged one-to-one meetings with all their team and the HR manager and leaders within the business and that sort of thing. Anybody else want to add anything? They were the main points I think that came out from it.
Right, thank you, Amy. Anybody else from that group? Anything else you would like to add? Oh, okay. So the other group, so Elaine, Karen, Pam. Somebody like to summarise the group discussion?
I don't mind.
Thank you, Elaine.
Bits and bobs, that's fine. But we spoke about onboarding experiences that we'd had, and one of our poor souls had her induction 18 months after joining the organisation, which I would suggest isn't recommended. But it really, we agreed that onboarding started with everything from the ad onwards and each touch point, and making sure that people felt welcomed and part of the team. And organisations had different ways of doing that. With Valeria's organisation, she sent out a notification of the new starters. There was obvious induction programs. And I think that we all agreed that onboarding went much further than just the induction program, and making sure that staff knew of the different people and the different role holders within the organisation. And we spoke around different methods that would use to do that. I don't know whether anybody wants to come in.
Do you just want to briefly mention the DIY onboarding that you mentioned? Oh,
yes. In one organisation, which is in defence and security, so members of staff were spread throughout the world. What I did in that organisation was to set out a list of questions and information that new employees had to find out, give them an amount of time. So in the first week, find out this, second week, this, and then touch base with them. Hopefully it would be their manager rather than a member of HR, but as a last resort, it would be HR. And just talk around that so that they felt empowered in their own time and with mutual agreement to talk to individuals or teams to find out information, which hopefully would be less formal and would be more conversational, so that they could establish those informal relationships with individuals that they either needed to know or for the information to fulfill the knowledge that was required in their roles.
Thank you. Any other suggestions, ideas, comments anybody wants to add from the list?
Could I just pick up on Elaine's DIY induction? So I was in at an awards event and I came across a sales organisation that had a unique do-it-yourself induction program for graduates. They were given some guidelines, but they had to, a list of people, they had to find out who was the marketing director or various people like that. So they were learning to network within the safety of the organisation before they went into sales roles. And we had discussions around that. Whilst it might be appropriate for some people, school leavers, apprentices and others, particularly whilst we're working virtually, that just wouldn't work for everybody.
Thank you.
I also add that, I mean, for me, it's really working. So I'm going to bring my own experience, that it's really important that we stress the positive sides, the positive bits of our organizations, bringing your, as an example, your own experiences that you had, so that the even this before, you know, this is part of the onboarding, right? Even before the induction, but then the employee feels in this way, the new hired feels a bit more, oh, okay, I'm in the right place, I'm working for a good company, rather than just like, why do we have to hide good things, right? It's always good to share them beforehand. So I think this is another little thing that people could do.
Thank you very much. Some really some good ideas, and certainly the group that I joined, it was really interesting to hear the different angles, different experiences. So lots of, I hope, food for thought. I think one of the things, you know, that comes through to me is about, you know, making sure we keep it person-centered. We actually put that individual experience at the center of all our planning. And, you know, get the basics right, get the practicalities of their computer, their IT access right, because that causes so much frustration. But think about the perspective of somebody being very keen, highly motivated, but with a level of anxiety, and what will help get them from that point to being highly productive and a great ambassador and representative of your organisation. So I hope you found that useful. My contacts for anybody interested in connecting up afterwards, which would be great. But I'm also going to use it as an opportunity for a plea for some assistance. I've asked a couple of times, some of you may know, I'm about to do some research into self-compassion in female HR professionals. So I'm looking for a few more participants that are either members or fellow CIPD and currently working within an HR role in an organisation that might be willing to help me. It will involve just answering a few online questions and about an hour's conversation with me. So if you would be interested, I would really appreciate you getting in contact and possibly helping me out with that.